There. Now it's going. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here, and we appreciate everyone coming to today's presentation. It is from AI to sales to profit in this unstable time. We've got three great presenters today that we're going to hear from. We're going to be first hearing from Pamela Kushlan, and she's going to be talking about payment processing and how payment processors can be an asset to your business rather than a liability. Then we've got Clay Neves, who's going to be talking about the sales process and how to make it so it works better for you, especially now. And then we're going to be hearing from Robin Hewling, who is our resident expert on AI, and especially for strategies of how to implement it in your business and how to get the right people using it. So we're going to get started, and I'm going to say, Pamela, please, we appreciate you being here, and thank you, and go ahead and get started.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to talk to all of you. As an office manager for decades, I've learned a lot about business and how every business owner is following their passion, but of course, to do so, we're leaning on other industries for the logistics of getting business done. And having done that, and having been in the merchant services industry for the past 8 years this summer, I'm pleased to give you some information that I have gathered, and I hope that it will guide you in making better decisions in the future, as I'd love to be a resource for you going forward. At a young age, my parents taught me to trust myself and take calculated risks. At this time, my dad had actually refinanced a house to buy rental properties. But what I recognize as well is some of life's risks can be mitigated. And that's what I'm here to discuss with you, is how to make the best of merchant services in your decisions. So merchant services itself is like the wild, wild west. Unfortunately, it has very little governance to make sure that solid business practices are maintained. And as a payment processing agent, I had no requirement of an education or anything. I actually have taken some education as an option, but it is not a requirement to get any type of specific education. And that's part of the concern and the issues that are going on in the industry. There's not much oversight. There's not a lot of accountability and ethics. Merchant accounts can be sold just like mortgages. So some businesses don't know who is currently servicing them. Sales agents don't have, again, and there's not a lot of due diligence from ISOs and MSPs to see that there's no criminal record for the sales agents that are actually collecting your very pertinent information. We'll talk about contracts and things like that, and cancellation fees that you got to watch for, looking at merchant accounts and the importance of PCI compliance. Because a lot of merchant providers, unfortunately, are not prioritizing the fact that they want to make sure that their merchants are retaining PCI compliance. So what a lot of people don't know, merchant PCI compliance is a mandatory set of security standards by the PCI DSS. It's designed to make sure that all companies are accessing and storing and transmitting credit card information to maintain a secure environment that will prevent fraud. This actually applies to all organizations, doesn't matter the size, anyone that's actually handling and processing credit cards. What a lot of businesses don't know, though, is it's not just a one-time event when you first start your business. It's generally a yearly renewal process, although the timeline of the renewal for the PCI compliance can be modified. But what people need to know is, obviously it's very important how your card data is handled, or your customer's card data, what tech is actually securing it, what the firewalls are. Things aren't written down. And the problem becomes is that a lot of merchant providers, unfortunately, again, because they lack, ethics, is they'd rather profit off of your lack of liability coverage and make a profit. And like I said, it's a dirty industry. So I also want to make sure, well, excuse me, I also want to make sure you understand about interchange rates. So there's hundreds of them. So Visa alone, for instance, has over 400 different interchange rates just with its brand. And the card holder that is shopping or purchasing your products or services, it's their bank or credit union that issues their card, and the brand that bank or credit union shows that decides the rates. So what a lot of people don't know, though, is regulated debit rates are as low as 0.05 to 0.5%. Now, debit cards, of course, do carry more risk of fraud, as these transactions are bank to bank. But with credit cards, the interchange credit card rate is actually from 1.5 to 3.5 generally. There are a few cards that actually even go higher than 3.5. But with a credit card, it's much more secure than debit cards because it's not bank to bank. Every credit card actually does have fraud protection, which is a big deal. Your basic credit cards have minimal rewards, and so they have generally lower interchange rates. The more rewards and the more benefits you're getting from your card, the the more costly that is to accept at your business. So the premium cards with higher perks have more. Corporate business cards, again, anytime there's a revolving credit limit, and there's a reward, that means the cost is going to be higher. You also have your card present or not card present. Now, obviously, when you're at a physical store, you're handing them a card, so the fraud risk is lower. But when you're on an e-commerce or phone transaction, there's no validation that the card was actually yours or approved. And therefore, that's why there are higher rates charged because there's increased risk. You've got your merchant category. Now, this can be also another reason why costs could be higher. So, for instance, a gun range, they're going to have higher credit card risks, and therefore they will have higher interchange rates. Another thing to make sure you understand is your transaction volume does matter. Now, your interchange rate itself isn't actually negotiable, but like if you're at interchange pricing plus, the amount of the plus is negotiable. And also for flat rate model providers such as merchant aggregators, they also, if you're doing a higher volume, they will work with you with price. But the most important thing I want you to gain from this is to understand that excellent merchant service providers, they do prioritize your service, your education, and your technology and your rate. So for the businesses that are just shopping rate, you're probably missing the boat because all of these other factors are equally important to your success. Now, what I want to make sure also that you know is that B2B merchants have the option of using, or bigger B2B merchants, medium to large size merchants, have the option to using a purchasing card or a virtual card programs. Now, they're very similar. I'm not going to talk about the distinction, but what I want to make sure you understand is with these programs, large ticket items is 7,775, which of course with these large businesses is actually a fairly small amount. And these rates are under 2%. And so the balances are paid in full, so the banks are holding no risk, and that's why they give these low IC rates. But the point of this also is to make sure that you understand that these banks actually receive a list of your payables, and then they provide the bank, the consumer, the cardholder, a secure payment link so that so that it's very secure and not a different amount can be charged. A different person couldn't cash the check or claim the funds. So it's a very secure way to run business. The other thing too is besides the fact that it tracks expenses easier is they also get a 2% cash back yearly that's tax free. Imagine if you put all of your COGS on a 2% cash back at the end of the year and got that tax free. It would be quite the advantage. So people aren't understanding the cost of time. And so I would love to talk to any business owner that you know, or if it's you yourself, to share with you exactly how card can accelerate your cash flow and improve efficiencies. Because fact is if you're trying to collect from your buyer at the same time as you're trying to sell to your buyer, that creates a sticky relationship. And there is a way to work around that while still utilizing and implementing your current term policy. I did get a certification for B2B payments through Roger McNamara. He's actually the director of Visa's B2B payments. So I've gotten a lot of information with that, and I'd love to share that with you. Now, I didn't want to go over this in detail, but I want to make sure you understand that QuickBooks actually has multiple integrations. So if you're using QuickBooks for your merchant services, you're using Intuit as your payment processor. And if you're a small business doing 10K or less, it's a great fit. But it is a flat rate fee that they're using. And also, it can be a little wonky, I guess, for some people. They find they struggle with QuickBooks. But I want to make sure you know that you can get other integration options. They usually call them plugins. And this is just a small list of them. This isn't even close to all of them. And I'm not going to discuss them all. So if you'd like to screenshot this or whatnot, I suggest you do that. But I'd be happy to go over some of these options in detail if that's of interest to you. The other thing I want to make sure you understand is PayPal, Stripe, and Square. They're what's called merchant aggregators. Now, there's advantages to them, and obviously, just like anything in life, there's disadvantages. Obviously, it's simple onboarding. You can quickly start processing. It's very transparent, and it's easy to reconcile your statement. The struggle, however, too, though, is that with flat rate pricing, if your volume is over 100K a year, specifically, you're not getting it at any advantage of the debit costs that are actually quite low, and you're paying more than you have to. And so, you know, there's anyway, there's a lot that I would love to discuss with this. There's actually a lot on this, but I just wanted to cover this quickly to make sure you understand. So Square, for instance, as a merchant aggregator, in person, they charge 2.6%. Online, it's 3.3. Again, this is a great option for small businesses, especially the businesses that are doing 10 or 5K a month. But if you're doing over that, their free equipment and all of that, it's not quite enough of an advantage. The bigger you are, I feel like the bigger and the more coverage that you are better off having. Stripe is also very commonly used on the e-commerce platform because it's very easily integratable. But I do want to make sure you also understand, again, it's not very cost effective for a lot of businesses. 2.9% flat rate fee is actually quite costly unless the majority of your clients are paying with a credit card and a higher end credit card at that. So, this is why we like to look at your merchant statements when we're giving you a payment analysis or an audit. Because when I look at your merchant statement, or my team does, we can decipher the type of cards that you're receiving and the volume that's going through your account. And that helps decipher which pricing model might be right for you. But flat rate pricing, oftentimes, as you can see here with PayPal, 3.49%, that's actually quite costly. Every time you're even getting a credit card at 1.5%, you're paying 2% higher than you have to on each and every transaction. And, it's kind of like akin to buying the same side of salad or your lobster. You wouldn't want to pay the same price for both. And so, these are great fit options, but again, there's a lot to it. Tiered pricing is another payment pricing option. Now, this one is common for banks to be offering. There are a few credit unions that I have actually seen do this quite fair, but for the most part, I find that this pricing option is not advantageous. You've got your qualified, your mid-qualified, and your non-qualified. So basically, you've got three levels of flat rate pricing. But the struggle is these pricing options lack transparency. Sometimes you might have something in one bucket of like the level one, and then the next 2 months later, the same card and the same pricing transaction could fall into the second bucket and charge you more. So there's just a lack of transparency with this. So I suggest this is not the best pricing option. Traditional surcharging, that is when the merchant says, I don't want to pay for the credit card fee and all the bonus points that you're getting on your card, but I will pay for your debit card. And so this actually, Visa capped the amount at 3% that the fee can be charged to the customer. But processors still sometimes, and mine included, depending on, again, your card transaction that you're getting, would actually still charge the business another 0.25 or 0.5%. Because again, a lot of cards are at 3.5%, and we'd go out of business if we weren't covering the expense of your business. So, but with each and every pricing model, they all need to be registered with the card brands. And each pricing model also has requirements of what compliance would look like. For instance, with surcharging, there's supposed to be signage, and it's also supposed to be a line item on the receipt. Another pricing model that I wanted to discuss with you is called cash discounting and dual pricing. So both of these pricing models are aiming to alleviate the cost of credit card processing altogether for the customer, or encouraging the customer to then use cash or check, depending on the format. Obviously, with B2B merchants, it's usually cash or check. Online, it would, of course, be ACH or perhaps check as well. With the cash discounting, the difference between the two, cash discounting is when you're literally raising the price of all of your items, say 4%. And then if your customer decides that they want to pay with cash and or ACH, then they would get that 4% discount so that they then are not getting the add up charge of the card. Where dual pricing is different because it's actually saying, here's your retail price and here's your cash price. No, so the customer sees both options very clearly, and the technology still adds up the fee for you. So in essence, it's the same. But what I want, the focus really is a matter of what you're displaying and what you're showing your customer. Are you showing your customer that they're paying the fee, or are you preferring that they don't see the actual fee and they just get the discount? So again, these are your pricing options, and this is what's really, the more you know, again, the more you can decide what fits best for you. It's really a lot of how you feel when you're at a business. If you feel comfortable paying, the dual pricing or the credit card fee, then maybe at your business you feel comfortable charging it. Similarly, if you don't feel comfortable paying that fee, then maybe the dual pricing and the cash discounting is not an option that really fits for your culture or your business. So, if you have any questions, again, obviously, I'd love to be a resource for you. I also wanted to discuss merchant statements. So, with merchant statements, the concept here is, a lot of people don't even know how to retain their merchant statements, and I find that interesting because if you're not looking at what you're being billed, how can you know what you're being billed? And of course, as your money is coming in, this is the source of all the income for most businesses. So it's super important when you're looking at your merchant statements or to look at your merchant statements. Because again, if you're not auditing your merchant statements, which I do suggest you to do yearly, but if we're not looking at how much we're being billed to receive the money we're getting, then how can we know what money could be saved or retained in that very process? But we have to look at the actual statements to do an audit because if I don't see your statements, I can't know what hidden fees you actually are getting. You might think you're paying 2.5% or whatever, but when we're looking at the merchant statements, we can decode some of the difficult, you know, line items that are on your statement to help you read and analyze exactly what you're getting. And so, again, I do suggest audits yearly. We do them for you. I've got 4 non-exclusive partners that I work with that assist me with all of this. And again, too, another thing too is we can also, when we're doing an audit, we can audit both your current like pricing model as well as maybe surcharging or traditional surcharge. We can look at a couple different options or a few options. So if you'd like to look at that and that helps, I'd love to be a resource for you. But of course, your ticket volume, your average ticket, your monthly volume, all of that is needed in order to know what pricing model and what pricing we can offer you. Merchant contracts. I wanted to make sure you also understand the things to look at for merchant contracts. So some businesses don't offer them. Most of my clients are month to month. I do have a vendor that actually does do contracts, but they do not charge for cancellation fees so that people technically can get out of them, which is why I was okay with that particular one. The thing with most contracts that's frustrating is again, first off, the print is this tiny print, and a lot of businesses aren't even reading the fine print. In the fine print, a lot of contracts is typically auto renew for years, however many years the contract is, if they do not get advance written notice of 30 to 60 days. So that's super important to know. Another thing is how much is the cancellation fee if indeed you choose to cancel? Because a lot of businesses, again, when they're contacting or working with a merchant provider, they're really unaware of what service, quality of service, or lack thereof that they're going to receive. Another thing too is understanding that if a lot of people think that they want to sign a contract because they want to lock in a rate, but most rates are not locked in by contract. Rates themselves are generally, they call them rate creeps in my industry. But the fact is businesses just have to, and generally this is in the fine print of the contract as well. But most businesses, again, are not looking at their merchant statement, and the provider will just say on your merchant statement that your rate is going up next month, and then it does. And so I can't tell you how common it is for me to talk to a business and then discover that the rates keep getting increased. And yes, while you can maintain or go back to that provider to, get the rate that you were quote unquote promised, the struggle is you're acknowledging or accepting the fact that they didn't care about upcharging you in the first place unscrupulously. So, I would question their service at that point, but you do you. And again, everyone has their options of how they want to run their business. New merchant accounts. So, a lot of people don't realize it, but when you're doing your merchant accounts, there's a lot of information that we do need. But like a lot of times, whatever equipment that you already have or whatever technology that you already have, or e-commerce connection as well, there's a lot of times that we find that we can actually set you up or switch you providers by the back end, which is called the gateway. And we do that literally through a simple form that's called a VAR sheet. It's actually quite simple. And so, that's why, if you think you can't connect or integrate with someone else, it's definitely worth checking into and making sure. Now, another thing too is if it's a bigger organization, no matter what, there has to be one person still putting their name on the line for the account because there still has to be a person accountable for the account. This is a financial statement, it's a financial transaction, and we do need to have a person accountable versus just the business. Now, I want to quickly let you know as well, I do have other investments that I do. I actually am involved in a crypto payment processing asset company. They actually have agreements with Ingenico, Verifone, Pax, NCR, and Shopify. They're about to do a crypto credit score. They're actually blending it with the big three providers of TransUnion and all of those. And then they're also intending on tokenizing secondary markets and oil. So if this interests you at all, let me know. Of course, I'm not a financial advisor, and I would suggest you do your own due diligence. But these people in the company that I'm with, they are tied to Wall Street. They have big Wall Street ties, and we are about to board the lower boards of NASDAQ. So just DM me crypto, and I would be happy to get you some deets on that. And lastly, I want to let you know as well that I am an associate for Legal Shield and ID Shield. And these particular businesses, Legal Shield offers attorney consultations, consumer protection. You can have a legal attorney call or represent you on your case. You can consult them. You can get a free will. You get 24/7 emergency representation, moving violation assistance, contract consultation, and more. And then the ID Shield offers complete social media and personal identity protection, along with complete identity restoration. And the ID Shield also comes with a VPN, which in and of itself pays for its monthly service. But the beautiful part about the ID Shield as well is it covers all entire family up to age 17. And unfortunately, what happens is in the industry, a lot of 15 and 16-year-olds or infants and babies and kids, their identity, their social security gets compromised, and they don't even know it until they become of 16 age where they're trying to get a credit card or of 18. So it's a really great program, and I'm happy to talk to you both about them. So this is me actually gambling with my Italian family. But again, what I really like to make sure you know is, of course, life in itself is a gamble. But if you do your due diligence and hopefully use trusted advisors, you can put yourself in the right situation. So if ever I can be a resource for you, I'd be happy to do that. Again, my name is Pamela Kushlan. I've been in the industry for 8 years this summer, and I would love to be your resource for payment processing or however else that I might best serve you. So I'd like to now introduce you to Clay Neves. He will be discussing sales and the sales process.
You're muted, Clay.
There you go. Okay, let me get my. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, buongiorno, everybody. Clay Neves here, your sales architect. I want to talk today about the 7 incremental commitments that you need to you need to get your client, potential client to make the final commitment a foregone conclusion. So let's kind of get into what I see as a sales process that over 43 years now of sales management, I have learned is very effective in consultative sales. Consultative sales versus transactional sales, where you really are problem solving with somebody using your product or service. You know, there's a kind of a dichotomy in terms of sales typing. You have on one axis affective selling or affective salespeople, where they're emotional, they're very friendly. You can get to know them. You've walked into retail stores I know where they just love to make friends with people. And then on the other axis, you have directive. These are the people that are no nonsense. They get right to the close. You step on the car lot and they go, "What's it going to take to get you into a car today?" Well, So the question is, which one is really the most effective? And in my experience, it takes both to really sell consultative. And so when I look for salespeople to hire, here are the skills that I look for the most, because both affective and directive make effective. And there's an order to it. And this is the things I look for in a potential salesperson is number one, empathy, the real ability to connect and feel for the people you're dealing with, which leads to curiosity, a deep-seated need to know more about them and what they're dealing with that you might be able to help them with. From there, that gives you the answers that you need to get them the information most relevant to them to help them lead to a final commitment and getting it done. So we move throughout the sales process from affective, where we have a lot of empathy, and then we trade off that rapport that we build in the early phases to be able to get tough with them when we need to get them to make a decision that is right for them. And that is where we trade a little bit of the rapport for direction to get the deal done. And so the process comes through number one, inviting, inquiring, informing, and finally enrolling. So let's see how this applies itself. First of all, how many of you have gotten to the end of a sale and you meet these competitors who have been in on the sale with you? Okay, here's this one. And where are these people all the time? They are in the heads of the people that you're selling to. Meet Momentum. You know him. He's the one that whispers in their ear, just keep doing what you're doing. It's fine. It's not that big of a problem. We'll just keep doing what we've been doing. And I'm sure he's come up a few times and has quashed some sales for you. Next, we meet now Dewey. He's Scandinavian. See, Dewey Kjorsuff. Uh, and he's whispering in their ears that we can do this. We can do this without him. Now that he's told us how to do it, we can do it ourselves. We don't really need to pay him to do it. Has he ever joined a sales conversation? Then there's our good friend Al Thinkatolfer. Yeah, you know that guy. You get down to the close. Oh, it does sound good, and you think you've got the sale, but he needs to think about it. And we want to kind of keep him out of the conversation as well. Lastly, our good friend Kent O'Ford, he comes up and says, "Oh, man, money's tight right now. I don't see the value in what they're doing. We could maybe use that cash better for other things." And so we want to keep these people out of the sales process. Well, I have found that there are 7 incremental commitments you've got to get out of your clients that build on each other, that are a little bit harder to give than the preceding commitment, but they build to a final sale that commits the client to move ahead with you. First of all, they got to commit to spend some time with you. Secondly, you got to get them to commit and admit and own and confess that they've got a problem you can solve, that it is costing them. And because it's costing them, they've got to solve it as soon as they can. Next, you've got to get them to commit and show them that if they knew how to do it themselves, if they had everything they needed to get it done themselves, it would already be solved. And that they do need your help or help. Now, whose help? Well, here's where you've got to get them to commit to be open to your solution. And then once it's presented, how do we get them to own the fact that our solution does solve their problem? I'm not talking price yet. That's the next commitment. But the next to final commitment is this solution solving the problem? And we get them committed on that first before price. Once they commit to the solution and that it will work that way, now we want to negotiate terms that can make it affordable for them to at least get started at minimum. In other words, it's always better to get commitment to start with something now than risk them not starting with anything by putting off everything until later. So that's the path we're going to follow today. So first, let's talk about I will spend my time. Now, I'm not going to get in this discussion about how to set appointments. That's a completely different presentation, coaching session, because appointments are the crux of all your sales success. If you can't set appointments, you're not going to make it. Whenever I have to work with a salesperson, like I've been hired, the first thing I do with my salespeople is I talk to them about their appointment volume and how they're setting appointments. But we're going to just assume the appointment's already been made. So I like to, when I sit down with them, frame the appointment in such a way I'm not intruding on them. They've asked me to be there. They've invited me for some reason. So I like to have them take ownership of it. And here are some key questions, and we're going to talk a lot about the power of questions. When I hire a salesperson, the last thing I do with them, I give them a challenge. They give me a presentation of what they've been selling. And then I'll ask if they want a final challenge. And I'll say, okay, I want you to sell it to me now, but here's the play. 20 questions. You can't make a single statement, and you've got to take me from hello to let's go in 20 questions or less. Because asking questions is the key sales skill, if you ask me. So, the questions I like to ask at the very beginning is, look, you set this time with me. I know it's not just because you're lonely and want to make friends. You had a reason that you felt this would be the best use of our time today to meet together. So why did you consider this the best use of this next half hour or this next hour? Secondly, I'll ask the follow-up. So what is it that you most like to accomplish in the next 30, 60 minutes so that I can make sure I direct our conversation that way and achieve that for you? We can achieve that, work with you to achieve it. Thirdly, how are you hoping I can help? So why have you met with me? This helps me understand what he saw that I had said in passing or in the appointment setting conversation that piqued his interest. And then once I get his agenda as far as what he wants to accomplish, I'll put out my agenda. I want to find out more about you and your position, your accountabilities, where you are with and I'm going to be using today as the model because Ron Haycock is a client of mine, and we're putting together this for him. What I would do if I'm meeting for somebody representing Pratt and LeFevre, for example, and we've got a few people from Pratt and LeFevre on. Where are you with your tax strategy? Where do you want to be? What are your goals in far as your tax strategy and tax savings? What challenges are you dealing with as far as your tax situation? And I want to talk about how our solution can get you there. I want to explore how we can make our solution affordable for you and what our next steps might be, if any. One of the things I always like to do upfront is giving them out. It's okay if we get to the end of this, I want you to know if you don't see any value or fit for what I'm talking to you about, it's okay to tell me no. I'm a big guy. I'm a big boy. I can take it. Fair enough? Write down fair enough. Dude, this is one of the best tie downs that you can use. Sprinkle it in your sales presentation because it's hard to say no to. And this is another trigger of what I call a conditioned response. And you want to get as many conditioned responses working in your favor as you possibly can. Now, I will warn you, most people, without even knowing it, trigger uh, conditioned responses that shut down the conversation. You want to trigger the responses that open up the conversation until it's time to start closing down the conversation toward the end. And that's another coaching session in and of itself too. Now, once we get in the appointment, then I've got to get them sold on the fact that they do have a problem. How do we do that? The problem is the key to selling. A problem that you are uniquely qualified to solve for them. The problem is the gap between where they are with that particular thing that you can help them with and where they want to be. The bigger you can make that gap, the bigger they confess that gap to be, the more likely, if you can bridge that gap with your solution, they're going to buy from you. So let's look at some of the things that and questions, key questions that are so good at helping them understand the gap between where they are and where they want to be. Okay? So, what are they lacking between where they are and where they want to be? It's time, it's tools, it's skills, it may be money, it may be resources, it may be knowledge. They don't have that you do. And so these are the questions that can help them, help you understand where they are now. I like to go into their position, what their measurements of success are. Where are they? Where are you now with that measurement of success? Are you above preferred standard or below it? If you're above it, what's your next goal? If you're below it, how can we get you to standard? What are your big challenges with getting there? Why aren't you there already? What's that costing you? What would you change if you could? Where do you want to be? Why is that important to get there? Why aren't you already there? Golden question. What's been holding you back? That helps you kind of understand their gap a little bit. And remember, all these questions are not to just give you information. They're exploratory questions that more than anything help them learn about their own needs. And that's the key. Um, and so we want to tie them down to dollars and dates to be specific. They have to solve it as soon as possible. We've got to get urgency and priority in here as far as the problem is concerned. So, for example, or a principle to remember is the greater the cost of the problem in relation to the cost of your solution, the more likely they'll buy. So before I ever get later on in the presentation down to, which is the very last thing after I've built maximum value, the very last thing I get to is negotiating price. One of the first things I get to is helping them calculate the cost of the problem and the cost of not doing anything about it. So there's two types of costs that you must figure in. Now, a lot of salespeople do the direct costs, but one of the biggest lost sales opportunities is not helping them calculate and factor in opportunity costs. What's the difference? Direct costs are what is coming out of their pocket, what it's actually costing them. The opportunity cost is because they're doing it that what isn't coming in to their pockets. You want them to be able to calculate both. Do not calculate this for them. You set up the equation, let them do the calculations. They'll believe it. So, for example, using a Pratt and LeFevre, one of the things that we can help people do, one of the problems that Pratt and LeFevre really focuses on is how can we minimize or eliminate your tax liabilities? Okay. So I might start out with this question sequence. So how much did you pay in taxes last year? And I want a specific answer. Okay. Now, granted, we need to build trust to get to this point, but hopefully we've built that. What was your net income before taxes? And then we know those two things, and so we ask them, so your taxes, what percent, what would that be of your net income? And they can see that the taxes ate up, even though they're paying maybe a 35%, what percentage of their net income did the taxes eat up? How much did you pay in personal taxes? Because in the combined solution that Pratt and LeFevre provides, we can use business deductions and losses even against personal income to decrease your personal taxes as well. So all in all, you paid X amount in taxes. Yes. So that's an example of taking them through calculating the cost. Now, I could add one more here for adding opportunity costs, and we're going to get to it right now. If you could get back all that personal and business taxes that you paid, what would be the first things you would spend it on instead, and why? So I'd invested in my business to get more sales. So if you could put that into advertising, that $35,000 you paid in taxes last year, what would that do for sales? And how much would that be? So because you didn't have that money because you spent it on taxes, you also lost X amount in sales. And we want them to add that to the total. And how soon would you like to stop? This is urgency, paying that out for taxes and start spending it. This goes to the opportunity cost. Start spending it on things more important to you. Okay. I've got to get them to admit that they need help with this. One of the key questions that can help with this is, why aren't you already there? Can I ask why you're not already there? What's been holding you back from solving this yourself? And again, this will hopefully bring out the issues of time, skill, money, tools, resources, knowledge, etc. Would it be fair to assume, John, that if you could solve this yourself, you'd have already solved it? If you knew how to eliminate your tax liability, you would already not be paying taxes? Can I assume that? Is that fair? I need to get them to admit that. Now, this is the golden question. Once you've got these commitments down, they're ready for your presentation. The biggest problem salespeople make is they present their side, their case, before the jury is prepared, before the client is prepared to receive it. And so you want to ask that question. The golden question is this. Once I get them to that point, I can ask them, are you open to an alternative that has helped our clients minimize, even eliminate their tax liability? I call this a golden question because not only by this time I've hopefully dismissed our visitors that I introduced to you at the first, but they really want to know my solution at this point. More importantly, because I've spent the time to prepare them, they're open for it, but I also know what is relevant to them. I also know how to help them see that my solution works. We want to build the bridge now across the gap. We want to show them that we have the knowledge, the resources, the money, the skills, the tool, or the time that they're lacking to bridge it themselves. One of the things to remember is this. When you're selling, this is what happens. We're talking as salespeople about our products and features. This is the biggest mistake I've seen. Before we know the overlap with their problems, needs, and wants. And so we're talking over here, and all they're hearing is blah, blah, blah. They're just wondering, what value is this to me? And unless we know the relevance, this intersection between what we have to offer and the problem it solves for them, they don't care about what we're saying. This is where sales are made. Your product is worthless unless it can be applied to solving their problem. And the bigger the problem, the more value they will place on your solution. Once we get them ready to accept our, our presentation of our solution, I like to use what I call benefit packages. Okay, we talk about a feature based on what you've told me. You've indicated you're concerned that even though you've got the business, you may not be able to do all the deductions that you want. Well, part of Pratt and LeFevre's system provides you with all of the deductions you could possibly get because we insert into the business all of the things you're now paying out of your home budget as business expenses. Okay, that's just one. Can you see that if we can make your personal expenses, business expenses and deductions, that would greatly decrease the amount of tax that you would be spending. So now I'm closing them on that. Okay. Now, after I've done a few benefit packages, 3 or 4 or 5, I want to check to see where they are on commitment. I will summarize, hey, we found that we can move personal expenses into business to increase. We can take your home and make it a business capital asset that we can depreciate. We can do X, Y, and Z as well. Can you see how this can greatly reduce or totally eliminate your tax situation? And once we get that, we've got that piece. So, for example, these are some of the things that I would highlight and put into a benefit package that we neutralize the disadvantages of any of the one business structures. We get the advantages of all the business structures we use for our clients. We protect them from legal liabilities. We assure seamless succession. We monetize their personal assets and much more. And we do that with the once business structure and cash flow chart that I would take them through and present, closing them on each benefit of each feature of this program. And we can do the same thing for your program and how it meets and solves the problems of your clients. Well, let's see what's going on. Okay. Let's skip that for time's sake. So we've now got down to the point where we ask them, can you see the summary close of each of the benefit packages? Have we got the right solution, John? And they'll say at this point, mostly, well, how much is it? Well, before we get into that, I just want to make sure we've got the right solution. Then, if we've got the right solution, I'd like to negotiate how we can make it affordable for you. We'll talk about that. But I want to first just make sure we've got a solution you believe can solve your problem, can meet your objectives. Are we there? Is this the right solution? I got to close on that before the price. Assuming that we can make it affordable for you, have we got a solution that works for you? I want that to come up before price so that I can work on it now and overcome any objections that they might have that are still outstanding before I get to price, so that I can address them at this point before price becomes an issue. So once we get to that point, they've said, yes, this is it. I've handled all the objections. There's none that are outstanding because I've isolated them all. I've answered them. I've got commitment to them. Now I'm ready to go into the final close on the price, the value. We want to use pivot questions. We present the price in whole. How does that work for you? And it'll either be yes or no. That does work for me, or well, and if it's anything besides, yeah, let's go for it. I want to start to negotiate I want to get off of what doesn't work, and I want to get onto what does work for them. I want to get off of why they can't move forward, and I want to start talking about how they can move forward. So these are the pivot questions that I love. If not this, then what? So if they get down there and say, this doesn't, well, what would work? If not this much, how much? Well, if you can't handle, um, $2,000, what can you handle? What does fit into your budget? If not now, then when? If they say I can't do it right now, well, then when? Again, I want to get off of why they can't onto how we can. If not here, then where? If not you, then who? Maybe I'm talking to the wrong person. All these things will come out with pivot questions, and we can get the discussion from why we can't to how we can. Finally, we want that discussion to end with them accepting whatever terms now we negotiate. And we've got there by getting each incremental commitment. And once we get them going down each commitment, there is a certain inertia, momentum that will drive them more successfully to a close more of the time. Okay. So I don't know that I have time to do my song. I actually sing here to give you the rhythm of proper presentation, but I'd be love to do that in a future one. But just to review the flow of it for you, I have this slide. So if that was meaningful for you and you'd like to see what we can do for you, especially if you don't come from a sales background but need to sell, there's my telephone number. Call me, text me. There's my email. Send me an email. Or you can get my online business card at that QR code. Okay. Also, I'd like you to check out my sales relations online academy and help desk. I've got some videos there, some training there that is complimentary. Just follow this QR code to salesrelations.com. Scroll down to the course listings, and you'll see some that are previews. Feel free to watch any of those and get in line with me or get in touch with me if you would like to have a sales coach with 43 years, having trained tens of thousands of salespeople over the course of my career, having listened and evaluated and coached on tens of thousands of sales presentations at your beck and call to answer any questions that you might have in real time to help you save the big deal. Believe me, there's hardly any sales situation I haven't handled over the course of that time. Let's talk. And with that, I would like to introduce Robin Hewling. Now, she looks like a normal human being, but she is a super lady. I've known Robin quite some time as a friend and neighbor, and have always been impressed with how sharp she was. But I never really realized how sharp she was until I actually got a copy of her book. And I'm sure she'll tell you all about her book. But what I like about Robin is in the world of AI where it's so impersonal, she has tied AI to the human side of business to first enhance how we relate to each other in business, because in business, it's all about relationships. And AI really isn't all it can be unless it also enhances not only our capabilities individually, but our relationships with other human beings. And so, with that, I would like to introduce to you the expert in my book on the humanizing AI, Robin Hewling.
Thanks, Clay. That was such a nice intro. I should bring you along all the time, or I can just keep this recorded and use it. Well, thank you to Ron and to Boyd for inviting me to speak with you guys. This is one of my favorite topics. And it's kind of funny because I have no tech background, but I talk about AI nonstop now. So before I really get started, I see there's about 10 of us on here. How many of you actually are using AI? If you can hit the like button, if you can leave something in the chat, a thumbs up if you're able to let me know where we all are on the AI scale. Are we scared to use it? Do we think it's overhyped, underhyped? Are we just putting up with it because we have to? How do you guys feel about it? I see daily thumbs up. So because I only have 30 minutes to talk about this, and learning about AI is like drinking from a fire hose, right? Where it's just all the things coming at you all at once. But what I am really passionate about, especially for entrepreneurs and solopreneurs and small businesses, is the fact that it doesn't really matter how we feel about AI. We have to have a knowledge on how it works, how it's utilized, and be able to make educated decisions when it comes to AI. One of the number one questions I get asked, besides how do we teach it, how do we learn about it, what do I do? It's what tools do I need? And you will find a plethora of AI tools that will claim to solve all of your problems. And what will happen is if you don't actually know what those problems are or how AI can solve them because you've educated yourself, you're going to waste a lot of money. So I am really passionate about just education on literacy and fluency. Let's understand what AI is and what it isn't, its parameters, put some guardrails on it. And then let's come up with our policies and our strategies, whether or not what's going to happen if we do double our businesses with the use of AI. How do we do sales without sounding like AI is involved at all? When everybody else is using AI, how do we double down on humanity? So there's a lot of questions and a lot of ways that AI can be integrated. I did just write a book on people first AI integration. And so I'm so passionate about that because your team, your people are the ones that are going to be the biggest assets, whether or not you use AI. Because of the technology and the abilities of AI, a lot of us have to invest in SaaS services to process all the things that we need. But with the help of AI, we will be able to build in-house and build the exact SaaS and client relations and all of that in-house without actually having somebody else to have to build it for us. So being able to educate your team is going to be invaluable. I'm going to start sharing my slides real quick to let you, actually that's the wrong button. Okay, let me go back to sharing. So like I said, my background is not in tech. I just happened to fall into tech when I became the chair of Women in Leadership for Silicon Slopes. I don't think this is working. Is this working? Can you see my slide? I can't see you now.
Sorry, I had to find my button. And yes, I am. People first AI integration.
Okay. Let me see if I can. I lost you guys. Okay, please. Okay.
Okay.
So This is the pyramid that People First AI pyramid that I created to help everybody remember what is the foundation of learning AI. And people first, whether that is doubling down in-house on your culture or doubling down on the human relationship with your clients, that has to be the priority before you bring on any AI. And then you've got to know about strategy and policies. There's things that you've never had to think of before. When implementing AI, you can't just do your regular org charts. You can't just have a VP of very important things. You have to know what exact tasks are being done by each position in that org chart, because AI works off tasks and instructions. And if you don't actually know what the workflows are, it's really hard to get those case studies going. And so with strategy, you've got to be able to build policies on what happens when we're very used to AI recording us online in Zoom meetings. What about in a board meeting with somebody wearing an AI glasses? Is that going to be stored in-house? Does somebody have to give permission that they are willing to be recorded? All of these recordings, do they belong to the individual or do they belong to the company? All those types of questions are things we've never had to deal with before, but are things that are every single day companies are being faced with. So having a policy and a strategy is extremely important. The worst policy is not having an AI policy. So at least getting started on that, and then build those skills, the literacy, the coaching. And this has to be a trickle down effect from leadership down so that everybody is on the same page of embracing it and not just being scared of it. If you just throw AI into the mix, your team members are going to feel like they're just training to replace themselves. So making sure your people are on the same field and then upskilling those current team members are going to be key, because right now there is no AI ready workforce to just bring in house. You're going to need to upskill the current teams you have. And I'm here to tell you that AI is not scary. You don't need to know how AI works to have AI work for you. And that is just in the messaging. Like I said, I have zero tech background, and now I speak to thousands of people on how to integrate and use AI. It is that easy. It just takes a little bit of time and practice. And that's what we say too, is there really are no AI experts. There's just those of us that have practiced it and used it more. So get started. Then you can bring in your tools. Then you can actually bring in the right tools to do those jobs. So this is what I talk about when I talk about AI literacy. We're going to talk mostly today about prompting, and that is really how to get the best out of your AI. So when I do any of these presentations, I really do want you to walk away with a skill, something that you can implement right away. And doing better prompts is a game changer. And so we're going to focus a little bit more time on that. If I have some time at the end, we're going to go into data. AI is amazing when it comes to gathering information, gathering data, and knowing what to do with it and organize it, which saves hours and hours and hours of time that doesn't need to be there. And so if we can focus on that a little bit, we'll get to that. But if we run out of time, maybe we'll do another webinar on how to use AI for data. But you need to know how to prompt your AI. We'll talk about generative AI and the differences, but then also how do you train your AI to speak and talk and respond like you, respond like the culture of your company, so that it does sound more human, not to trick anybody, but to be able to be a active, useful member of your team. AI fluency is just knowing what AI is capable of, what tools do best under what circumstances. And then vibe coding is kind of this new wild, wild west of having internal agents, is what they call it, that work autonomously, that work on behalf of you. So right now, when we talk about generative AI, it's a give and take with the AI. I tell it what to do. It gives me a response. I ask it a question. It gives me a response. But it will wait for me to tell it what to do each time. With agents, it will then just go and do its job. It can stop over here to grab the data, then go over to the emails and figure out how it fits in, go over to the recordings of the last meeting you went to so that we know what we have to cover in the next meeting. So it's really exciting tools, and it's not even that hard. You can also build your own websites. You can build your own apps without ever knowing how to code. But it all starts with the foundation of being able to speak to the AI. So what I talk about and what I speak about mostly is generative AI. So what generative AI is based on the large language models. And so large language models of AI have been trained on the human voice. And what's really fun and exciting, I love to tell this, is if you guys remember that little company called Enron that did a lot of fraudulent, corrupt things. Well, when they went to court, they brought all of their internal emails in that then became public, part of the public. And so OpenAI, the parent company of ChatGPT, used all of those internal emails to train their large language model on human behavior. So large language model just is a pattern recognition on how humans behave and how typical responses are in there. And generative AI uses those large language models to be creative. So outputs, so back in the day in Google, you would just put in restaurants and Google would pop up the next 3 restaurants. Where generative AI, you won't just put restaurants in, it would give you some ideas of why those restaurants are more to your liking based on what it's learned about you. And so it fills in the blank in a storyteller type of mode. So generative AI is very creative, and it's very exciting, and it's really fun if used appropriately. So here are some terms that are really, really important for everybody to know and understand. When you hear the word hallucination or your AI has hallucinated, it basically just means it's lying. But it's really not lying because it doesn't know it's wrong. It just fills in the blank. So it will, and we've seen this on the public stand, it will create statistics, it will make up statistics, it will confuse others' statistics with somebody, giving it credit to somebody else. So we always, before we put anything out into the public that has AI integrated into it, we have to have a human to make sure that it is accurate, and it is getting better, and you can prompt it ahead of time to make sure that it doesn't make up anything. But hallucination just means it's lying. A token, we hear that with ChatGPT, which most of us started with. I hope all of you are at least on the $20 a month access to that. But you can put in a ton of information without ever maxing it out for the day. If you're on the free version, you do see how you max out every day and you spend all your tokens. On Claude, which is a new favorite, it's been around forever, but its updates have been amazing and turned a lot of us into Uber fans. But it uses its tokens even in the paid version often. And so what a token is just the process it text to process what you're asking it to do. So it's going to use more tokens if you're making it be more creative and create pictures and graphics and bigger, longer stories. It's going to take more tokens. If you can create the most specific prompts to get it to do what you want it to do and not have it go think, you can save a lot of tokens on that. So it's a really important term to know. Guardrails are for humans and for your AI. AI works best when it has very strong guardrails and very strong parameters. It really is most efficient when it's given very specific tasks of what it is being asked to do and what it's being required to be done and what it's being asked not to do. Giving it the structure of don't do this, don't respond to this, don't release unless you check with this. Those are guardrails that AI works really well with. And then within your organization too, you've got to put guardrails on what can be uploaded. Before you bring in any AI tool, have you done an assessment for security? Have you checked to make sure that everybody's Google Docs are private? Are there any gaps or blind, what am I trying to say? Blind spots before you bring in AI. You need to know the guardrails of what your team can and cannot do. If they're allowed to use it in certain aspects of their job and not in others. We already talked about what a prompt is. It's just how you tell AI to do what you need it to do. And the more specific you give it, the better your response is going to be. The context window is where you text. And this is basically a short-term memory. So it's the question or the information you gave it in that window, and it won't store it consistently unless you've set that up to store. So it's the short-term memory of it, and it has not very limited space, but it does have a limited space. So you need to be aware of how much information you can put into your context window. And I already spoke about agents in AI. It's autonomous and it can run its own code. It can do things on its own without you telling it every single time what you need it to do. Now, the warnings are even more important than all of its abilities. So it does track and store data unless you have the enterprise version and you pay a lot of money. On your personal side, there is a toggle. So each of the AIs will ask you, is it okay to train the AI model on your information? And what that means is that your information is not private. So don't put anything, no social security numbers, no bank numbers. If you're an independent contractor and you are trying to use AI to help you with your consulting, don't put any information on your clients. If you're a company, are your contractors using AI? You got to make sure that none of your proprietary data is getting thrown out on AI unless you're paying for those securities. That's a big deal, and that can be a big breach. So it is biased and it does hallucinate. So bias is, it's just AI is just a learning tool. And so whoever uses it, that's where it becomes biased too. So you'll see things like on Facebook or TikTok. I've seen this very common where commentators will use AI to validate that they have the best religion. So they'll ask their AI, what religion is the most Christ-like, or what religion is the most accurate? And every single time, it's the religion of that person using it because it is biased. So when I was creating the cover for my book, and I needed it to create, I was doing a rough draft for my graphic designer. I wanted to think of some ideas, and I was asking for it to create 2 professionals. Well, those professionals were 2 white professionals. So it gave a bias. And oftentimes, if it is biased towards us, that we fall into that, we don't even notice. So we need to be hyper aware of that. Compliance, any data you take from your clients can fall under HIPAA, even if it's not medical. Any information like birth dates, addresses, it can fall under HIPAA. So just make sure you know all of your compliance and regulatories. It is really, I'm going to skip down because we are going, I want to cover more than just this kind of stuff. But the last thing I want to talk about is mental atrophy. And this is real. Those of us that are over 40 years old, over 50, we used to be able to memorize every single one of our friends' phone numbers. We could name 50 of them, including the time and the movies. And now I can't even remember my kids' phone numbers. I have no idea what their phone numbers are. I didn't even bother to try because we just don't use that skill set anymore. There's also this joke about if somebody finds my phone, if I lose my cell phone, it's not the pictures I'd be embarrassed about. It's my calculator, right? What is 7 times 8? We don't use the math anymore. So we just default to the electronics. Same thing can happen if you use AI too much. If you have AI being your creative brain, having it think out of the box for you, having it do stuff so you don't have to, having it do all of your grunt work, you will never build up the grit it takes to have the experience. In your companies, if you're using AI for every single one of your entry-level type positions, who are you training up to take over the pipeline? Who are going to be those senior managers? These are really things that need to be prioritized on us as humans and doubling down on our abilities as humans. Here are some fun ideas that you can use AI for as an entrepreneur, as a small business. For communication, you can do it for email follow-ups and drafting, your talking points. If you have content online, if you're a small business, you better have content online. And how you can use the same piece of content for LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, and then use that as for your blog and turning that into a newsletter. Being able to create one piece of content and letting AI tweak it for multiple platforms saves you so much time. With your operations, SOPs were the bane of my existence back in the days when I worked in restaurants. And I was over multiple restaurants, and SOPs were my Achilles heel. I did not want to update them all the time. And with the help of AI, being able to update your policies and your SOPs is a game changer, and not having to do it all the time. It can also help you with your research and your data. Find out what the market trends are. Find out, this is what I really love about the data, is find out like maybe some root causes. Like, why is this trending? What's different in this trend than it was last year? Why are we going in this direction instead of? It's a really helpful tool in any one of those situations. So before you bring in AI, you need to create a roadmap for yourself or for your team. You've got to have a structured plan that includes the steps you're going to take, the use cases. The roadmaps include your workflows, your org charts. You need to put timelines. If you want your team to learn and to train, if we're going to integrate or make a decision, we need to have timelines on that. When do we want things by? When are we going to have a policy made? When is our strategies going to be sat down and planned? Because you all know if it's not time efficient, it's time ignored. And then what do we want our goals to be when it comes to AI? Do we want to use AI as minimally as possible? Do we want AI to just keep us competitive? Or do we want AI to do enough work so that our team and ourselves get to do all of the interactions with potential clients and create, be innovative and think of new ideas? So what's our plan? What's our goal with AI? Again, we're going to go back to the basics because we only have a very limited time here, and prompt engineering is going to be your game changer. I took a course at University of Utah. I paid thousands of dollars to learn prompt engineering after I had dabbled in AI for over a year. I was convinced to take this class with another colleague of mine, and I thought, how can it teach me anything? I get what I want out of it. And one, it was a really hard class and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But at the base and the foundation of it was so much easier for me to get the results I wanted on the first time. Instead of wasting time talking to your AI, being able to be very specific of what you need it to do for you is going to make the results and the output so much better. So you want to be very clear about what you're asking AI to do. And so when I talk about this, I want you to think we're talking to AI. The context, tell AI who you are, who this is for, and why it matters. Because if you are using a meeting breakdown and you have made decisions in the boardroom that you then have to either take to your stakeholders or take to your front line, that messaging is going to be different. And so you need to let AI know, who are you talking to? Who is this information for? Is it for a client newsletter or is it for an internal memo? Let it know why it's being asked to do what it's being done, do, and who it's for. Give it structure. If you give it too much information all at once, it can confuse itself. So do things in steps. Let it know what it's going to be doing first. Second, if you're going to go in to fix a paragraph, right? You just are going to go in and fix a paragraph without changing the entire presentation. Let it know how those parameters and those guardrails. So your 6-step flow for consistent results when you're prompt engineering, is just a big fancy word for telling AI what you need, is define the goal. What are you trying to achieve? Assign it a role. And this is the secret sauce. And this is how AI's helped me even more, is if you give it a role, It is a marketing manager or marketing strategist. It is a editor. It is a employer. It's an employer trainer. What role do you want it to play? Because having it play the role as the marketing strategist or the client you're trying to reach, you can have it be your demographic and see how it would respond to this information that you've created. Provide context. We talked about that. Provide specific output. Do you want it in bullet points? Is this for an email? Is this just for a quick paragraph? What kind of output do you want? Because it might just create tables and charts out of nothing and waste your time. So let it know what it needs it to do. And then you need to test and refine it. So always checking its output and finding out how you need to tweak it. So with your workflow, I'm not going to talk about this again, but if you do want a copy of this, you can let me know. And this is just your step-by-step goal of how you get your best responses. So when you create your case study of how you're going to use AI, this is how you're going to set yourself up for success in using it and having a good output. Checking it, though, is of the utmost importance, and having that literacy and fluency knowledge will help you know where AI is losing it. Like, why is it giving you wrong information? You're going to be able to back engineer where the loss in communication, where the confusion is. So you focus on the accuracy. Are the facts right and correct? Clarity. Is it easy to understand if nobody knew what the prompt was? Would somebody be able to understand what it's trying to say and the whole point of it? Does the tone match your audience? So for me, I have different tones for different. I am very direct. I don't use a lot of fluffy words, but I also like to be familiar but professional. So are you direct? Are you warm? Are you nurturing? Are you professional, aggressive even? Like, does your tone need to be stern but understandable? Whatever it needs to be, you can tell it to be that. Is it well structured and logical? Does it make sense? And then does it actually align to the goals and objectives that you are doing? Which means this simply of, was this necessary? Are you wasting time with AI on things that now are taking you 30 minutes to do, which you could have just done on your own in 10 minutes? So finding out whether or not it's actually a valid tool to be used. Prompt libraries. This is something that is a game changer if you have teams that are using and talking to the same types of clients, if you're working on the same projects, if you're going to do the same thing over and over again, if it's a PR output, if it's a newsletter. And so you have the same structure, but just the specifics change. If you have a client email response, whatever that is, instead of typing it in every single time, you can create a prompt library, which is just a simple Word document or a Google Share, where you can copy and paste that prompt, the instructions for the AI, and just change those specifics. And if everybody has access to it, then we all can use it. So a prompt library would be like this. So your content creation. So if you have a new product for marketing, and it just depends on the product, it's going to change, but your demographic is the same. We talked about follow-up emails, cold outreach scripts. So if you are outreaching and you just need to change the specifics, but all your information is the same, put it in your prompt library. Meeting summaries, market research, your bio and your web copy. I'd use this a lot. I have about 5 different versions of my bio, and AI will help me streamline it to who's asking for it. So there's nothing worse than like hearing somebody's bio for like 3 minutes on, get to the point. So this would be an example of a prompt library. And this can just be honestly on a plain Word document, but you're telling it you are, what role are you giving it to you? What it's being asked to do. So you're writing a referral request message, and then the in brackets is going to be the specifics you change all the time. The context is insert what you're wanting it to do, what the point of this whole thing is, what the goal is, what the tone is to match your culture, and then what the output is. Does it need to be under 200 words? That is something for me often when I am applying to speak. I have to change my 4-hour workshop into a 2-hour workshop into a 1 hour keynote. So I've got to be able to adjust. And then when you apply for a description, for workshop descriptions, depending on the, is it going to be in the pamphlet or is it going to sell the course? So I can have AI edit it down to different words. Okay, we don't really have a lot of time for this, and I'll leave if you guys have any questions at the end. I hope you guys got some good information. But AI is really good for data analysis and helping with identifying trends and patterns, being able to generate hypotheses for deeper investigation, which is something I love to have it do. Upload a data set, simply that is scrapped of any personal information. So for me and like my client work that I use AI for, I never put my clients' names or company names. I assign a letter to them. So I switch out I scrub anything that is specific and use generic terms, but I can ask things that are protected. What are the key trends? What might this metric, why is it declining? And what insights should I be thinking of? That's another really great tool is like, what am I missing? What questions am I not asking? So again, though, no matter your feelings on AI, it's here, it's being used, and it needs to be integrated if you're going to stay competitive. But it will only be successful if you build it on top of the foundation of your emotional intelligence and your people skills. Those soft skills aren't actually soft anymore. These are going to be your power skills. Your emotional intelligence, your effective communication. Humans are going to be drawn to human interaction more than ever. And it's not that people don't care about AI, but people feel as if they or mistrust. So if you don't open up and tell things that are used AI, if your clients feel like you're trying to pull one over on them, if your team members feel that way, that's when AI becomes untrustworthy. When you let people know how and why you're using AI, it is a really great personal open up for dialogue type of thing. So if you see this, if you can scan this QR code, has an opportunity for a download for that roadmap that you can have. You can also send me an email asking me for copies of this presentation. And I come in and work with any teams on helping you learn AI, help you with building your strategies and your policies, and then also creating your own in-house training and learning so you can upskill your people skills. So I will stick around for, I guess, 2 to 3 minutes. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I was not able to see anything in the chat, so.
Well, I've got a few things here. Great presentations, Clay and Robin. That's from Pamela. I enjoyed gaining your insights today. Thank you very much. Ron Haycock says, tell Robin I think she is great. He couldn't figure out the react button, so he kept trying to get a thumbs up or something, I think.
Perfect.
So, but anyway, thank you so much. There is so much information in that. And if any of you are interested, please go to Robin's site and you can download that site. Now, one of the other things is if you missed any part of this or you would like to share this with other people, about a week from now, I will get this up on the website. It's under the resources tab of Pratt and LeFevre.corp. Then you go resources, and then there's a menu there, and you go to seminars, and it will be the top one because we put the newest one at the top, and you can go in and look that up. Robin, thank you so much. Clay, thank you so much. Pamela, thank you so much. And for us at Pratt and LeFevre, thanks for being here.
Bye. Thank you.